Hello again, everybody. Those of us of a certain age will remember this very well. America's 200th birthday, yes, the bicentennial. I was a teenager at the time, and I was really enthralled with the whole spectacle because every city had its own big celebration there, including my hometown of St. Louis. In fact, when our family was around the living room TV, might have been color, I guess. Like I said, enthralled with all of these other cities and the national correspondents in front of them saying, here in Philadelphia and here in Boston. And then they went to my hometown of St. Louis, and I actually went and found the video. Here it is.
We've gotten lucky in St. Louis after several days of miserable weather. The sun
I just thought
is
that
shining
was
brightly.
so cool to a young, impressionable, kid. We are going sort of back to the future in this episode for obvious reasons, because we are celebrating now in the middle of it of birthday number 249, but that's not the big one. It's next year, number 250, and I want to get this right. It's the semi-quincentennial. That's the last time I'm going to say it. I had to actually practice that a couple of times. From here on out, we're just going to say birthday number 250, but it is the big one, of course. But alas, here's what we do have to address. We can't ignore it. Over the next year, as this country prepares for birthday number 250, and all cities around the country, and including from the national government in D.C., as we start to make plans to prepare for this big celebration, just like they did back from 75 to 76, the naysayers are going to come out, and they're going to talk about the demise of this once great country. We've seen our better days and all of that gobbledygook. Now, I don't get political on this show, so this is not a political discussion. I stay in my lane, which is mainly about economics, about finances, financial issues, investing. Let me tell you something. When it comes to those topics, nobody does it like this country. I'm talking about economic liberty. I'm talking about economic freedom. I'm talking about entrepreneurship that is free to expand and explore and make success out of any American who has the wherewithal, the talent, the drive to make something of themselves. And it's always been like that. So come along with this kind of American ride, if you will. I know there's some home bias going on here, but my goal in this episode is to prove to you once again that we don't have to believe the doomsayers. We don't have to believe the naysayers, that somehow we're going off the beaten path and some other country is going to take our place. It is not happening, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. This is so important to understand as investors, because if you believe all of this other junk out there, your portfolio might actually reflect that. But instead, if you believe in the sanctity and the integrity of the financial system here in the United States of America, you will be able to meet your goals and objectives. And I'm going to show that to you by the end of this episode. You're going to say, yes, okay, I give, you're right, this country remains standing head and shoulders above everybody else. So to start off the conversation, let's go back in time. Many of you may remember this guy from your U.S. history classes. Yes, it's Alexis de Tocqueville, the French diplomat, really the political philosopher. I think that's how most of us may remember him. He toured the U.S. in its early days back in the 1830s, and he wrote this seminal book called Democracy in America, published in 1835, and it's still being talked about today. This book was really based on this growing experiment, this growing democracy of freedom and liberty that was really not seen anywhere else in the world. And one of the things that de Tocqueville noticed was, wow, you don't have to be born into a wealthy, well-known, rich family to make it in this country. You could come from poverty and actually make a difference. We don't have that in Europe, as he was saying. Now, things have improved, obviously, even in Europe, but still to this day, more regulations, more rules, more red tape, more government intervention keeps a lid on some of the growth potential in most of the rest of the world, which we don't have. Of course, we still have it. You've got to have some regulation and rules in place, but the ability for us to make something of ourselves, like an Alexander Hamilton, de Tocqueville talked about him, who was basically an immigrant. I think many of you know the story by now. And he becomes one of the most influential Americans in history. You could not have had an Alexander Hamilton over in Europe or Asia or anywhere else. That story is very much in place today. This is so important to me to get this point across because as an American, as Americans, this is in our DNA. This idea of economic freedom and liberty and the ability to make something of ourselves. It's in our bloodstream. It's in our hard drive. I hate to say we take it for granted because I don't think that's an appropriate way to put it. It comes naturally to us that others really don't have. For proof, let me tell you the story of this gentleman right here. His name is Marco Schiel of Germany. The Wall Street Journal did an article on him recently. Marco runs a successful clothing business. It's basically outdoor clothing. And 6 years ago, Marco buys this 200-year-old building to house this growing company. All of his dozens of employees moved into it, and he has spent the last number of years renovating it and everything like that. But here's the problem. Here, 6 years later, he's still not supposed to be in it. He hasn't quite fully gotten approval from German authorities to have this building in code. Yet he's in there and he's violating the rules, so German authorities continue to fine him. It's in the tens of thousands of euros now and growing. It's a litany of sins, apparently, that poor old Marco is committing, including the roof in the building. He put what he thought was up to code, but somebody came around and looked at it and said, hey, Marco, that roof, that's only approved for animals, like kennels, for dogs, not for human beings. So he had to spend a lot of money taking that down. He thought, you told me this first one was appropriate. How about a fire exit on the main floor going out onto a concrete slab? Looks normal enough. And he thought it was by code. And they said, no, that doesn't quite meet code, that normal concrete slab that you have there. Tear it up and do it again. And it's one thing after another. Look, I'm a small business owner now at One Private Wealth. I have been tasked to deal with municipalities to make sure we have the licensing and make sure the building is up to code. I get that. It's not always clean or easy. I've been frustrated at times. It doesn't compare to what's going on in other countries, like what Marco Schiel has been dealing with for 6 years. You would think a country would want someone like him to have a successful business, but they fight their people all the time. According to that journal article, by the way, the amount of red tape and regulation in Germany has doubled since 2009. Think about that for a second. Excessive bureaucracy is not the exception. It's the norm in most of the rest of the world to this day. Let me now give you some statistical evidence to back this claim and to cement it even more. And we're just going to throw up some slides here as I'm going to really prove to you now how much further ahead we are of anyone that we might consider trading partners or even competitors. Take a look at this first one. The U.S. economy by our GDP has grown 43% in the last 15 years. Europe, half of that. Japan, just a third. It's overregulation of labor, overregulation of business that is the primary cause of that, and that is not improving for most of those countries. I have seen some improvement, by the way, in France. Denmark has seen a little bit of the cutting of the red tape, but they still have decades and decades to go to catch up to us. Then there's new business applications in the U.S., doubling in just the past 10 years. Business formation in the Eurozone has risen just 26% at the same time. Simply put, folks, entrepreneurship is rewarded here to a much larger degree than anywhere else in the world. How about productivity? For every U.S. worker, how much business comes out of that average U.S. worker? Our productivity has doubled. The Eurozone since 2010 has doubled Canada, has doubled the UK. And that productivity gap is widening even more. Business applications widening even more because this thing, you might have heard of it called AI. We've done episodes on things like AI too. So we are not overstating here the importance of this. This is internet from the late 90s on steroids, and the U.S. is leading that. So the productivity gap is widening even more. China, I have to admit, is doing a pretty good job there. They are a formidable competitor, but notice that most of the most influential companies in AI are based right here in America. The amount of seed money, this is related to AI too, and venture capital from private investors, greater here than anywhere else, not even close. Then there's something called return on capital, which basically means if I'm a business, every dollar that I spend on business, what kind of return am I getting on that dollar? The return on capital of all S&P 500 companies is 21% right now. The European market at 13%. Let me leave you just one more, and I think this is the biggest of all. Think about the entire globe, world population. Americans, the U.S. population, we are 4.2% of the world population. That's not a lot, 4.2%, roughly 1 out of every 25. However, when you look at the trillions of dollars, we're talking over $100 trillion of market capitalization. That is the public markets around the world. America represents 64%. Let me repeat the math there. We don't let this get lost on you. 4.2% of the world's population, nearly 2/3 of the world's business through public markets. Do you really think that we have seen our better days? Do you really think that there is another country that is about to overcome us? Folks, the size and scope of the U.S. financial markets, if you did any investigating here, if you did any research, you would realize there is no other country that can handle the amount of business that is done on a daily basis, the amount of inflows, the amount of capital that is flowing from one market to the other. We are the only country that can absorb that and keep this economic engine around the world going. That's related to a podcast that I've done on the dollar. Go back and please look at that if you're new to this channel. I talk about the fact that some people have said the dollar is going to go away and some other currency will take its place. It's laughable. It is not going to happen. No other currency in the world can replace us as the reserve currency because we are the only one of size that can handle this. Now, let me calm down here for a second and say this. Look, I can't tell you what this country is going to look like at our next big birthday. Let's say it's number 300, 50 some years from now. I don't think I'm going to be here then, but some of you younger folks, you are going to be here. And we give this experiment over to the next generation, and I'm convinced you will take us up to the next greatest heights. Why do I think that? Because as an American, you have what I already talked about. You have the entrepreneurial spirit that's in our DNA. You have embedded in you the knowing, the knowledge, the understanding of economic freedom and liberty. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to learn necessarily how to do it in a textbook. It just defines you, who you are as an American that other countries do not have. We leave this country, I think, in very capable hands of the next generations from what I've been able to tell with my own kids who are in their 30s and a lot of their friends and the great things that they're doing. I say go forth, continue to make this a continued wonderful, great country from an economic standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I believe you're all up to the challenge. And in the meantime, the rest of us have to remember this very, very important axiom when it comes to investing. There is no other greater place to invest than the United States of America. So for those of us who put portfolios together, don't ignore the great U.S. blue chip, publicly traded companies that build wealth no better, no greater than any other country in the world. Yes, you're going to have some other investments in some international stocks, but nobody has failed by having a portfolio that is U.S.-centric for building wealth long-term. And I don't think that's about to change anytime soon. You can see in some of the subtleties we've had even here, I don't know if you picked up on this little red, white, and blue lighting that's going on. We're waving the American flag, and I don't do that just because I've got some home bias. I hope that I've proven to you this in this episode, statistically and reasonably so, we not only have led the world for the last quarter century, but because of my trust in the next generations, we will continue to lead. So continue to invest in this great country. Happy birthday, America. We'll talk to you again next week. And by the way, if you think anyone else could really use this little pep talk about not believing the doomsayers out there about this country and invest accordingly, please pass this on to them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll talk to you again next week.